division. It is 1.75 acres. Lot 1 is 1.75 acres, an existing residential structure and an existing accessory structure. Lot 2 is 1.35 acres and is currently vacant. Zoned R1, low density residential, served by a 6-inch water line. So basically, they're just taking that property and cutting it in half, essentially. It's not quite in half, but it's pretty close. No, he's just there for questions.
For consideration of clerical changes to the zoning ordinance. Tommy?
Turn that over to our city attorney, Mr. Creppen.
Good evening, everyone. Andre Greppin. I'm the city attorney, if we haven't met. In the December meeting, I'm going to be recommending that the mayor and board of aldermen adopt some clerical changes to our zoning ordinance. And these don't do anything new to the existing ordinance. These are, again, clerical changes that just clarify or improve upon what the ordinance actually says. And further, to re-adopt and republish our ordinance as a uniform document that citizens can go online and read. Because if you search right now for Livingston's zoning ordinance, what you'll get online is what's on the screen there, reprinted with all amendments through 2010. Well, we're here in 2025, and we need, lots of stuff has happened since then, and we need a uniform document that people can rely on to be accurate and not have to call up to City Hall to see if anything has changed before they interpret the provisions of that ordinance. So what we're talking about changing here, just a few things in our sign ordinance. We had public comments about this at the last BZA meeting that I thought were helpful and would be useful to incorporate here. If you see on page 2, the first change here is just adding this one sentence to the definition of a flashing sign that says, "This definition shall include electronic signs with messages that change." And again, that doesn't do anything new. That just spells out what the provision already says.
And Andre, while you're going through that, I'm going to show the old ordinance up there if anybody wants to reference that with what Andre's handed out.
Thank you. The next change is on page 5 here, and we're just clearing up a drafting error. I think we had two 11-203.9.3s, and so this just changes that to a 0.4. And then improves upon some sort of confusing language about the building inspector taking this to, taking a sign application that's in the historic district to the historic commission, and just says that the building inspector can't issue a sign permit until it's been approved by the historic commission. If it's in the historic district, have to do that first. The next couple of changes are on page 6. Under subsection G here, there's a drafting error with an incomplete sentence. We fixed that. And then under subsection L, this takes out language that refers to the general penalty clause of the ordinance, because the law says that if you have a penalty in an ordinance, you're supposed to put the penalty in there and say what it is. And the constitutional maximum for a municipal misdemeanor is $50 per violation, so we've put that in there. And then the general clerical changes goes to that as well. It says, and this is on page 7, it says, wherever there's a reference to a penalty or the general penalties clause, if it doesn't spell out what the penalty is, that language is stricken and replaced with this language that says it's a misdemeanor and it's $50 per violation, and each day a violation continues as a separate offense, which is what the general penalties clause says. This specifies that insofar as any of the provisions are the same as what's already been adopted, these aren't new enactments. These are just continuation of the previous enactments. And then the last provision here says that we will work with UCDD and MTAS to the extent necessary to republish an updated ordinance that has all of the amendments included since this procedure was last done in 1993. So this is really something that we need to do and really should stay on top of doing every year or so that we have a uniform document with all of the amendments up to date. So I'm going to recommend that the Mayor and Board of Aldermen pass this at the December meeting, and I'd ask that the Planning Commission approve it as well. And I'll take any questions that you have.
I have had a chance to go over this as Andre was explaining what he is asking us to recommend to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I didn't see any issues with anything that things that should have been done probably a while ago, so it's overdue. Yeah, so the big thing is just updating some definitions, making sure that we clearly identify what our penalties are for violating the code, and then saying that we're going to update our zoning ordinance timely. Is that pretty much?
And republish it so that we have a uniform document with all the
Yeah.
Is this what Kelly Coleman brought to us at the meeting the other day?
Yes, he had one comment that I thought was helpful about the flashing sign definition that I thought we should go ahead and incorporate.
Where that came from. All right, good deal.
But this cleans up other things also.
Okay, we need a motion to pass this on to the city council.
I'll second.
Ogletree. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All for it.
So this will be added to the December 1st council meeting agenda. Okay, perfect.
Item number 5, training and powers of duties of the Planning Commission. Is this yours?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So we've got 3 pretty brand-new members on here, and I thought it would be good for us, since we had a pretty light agenda tonight, to just kind of go over what we're supposed to do, what powers are granted to us by state law, and just a little bit of history of what we've done as a planning commission. And so I'm not going to go over the whole training packet that I gave you, but I did want to get some highlights here. If you'll notice that on the history of planning there, starting in 1962 is when the city formed the Planning Commission, calling it the Livingston Municipal Regional Planning Commission. In 63, they adopted subdivision regulations. I'll explain what those are here in just a little bit. And then in 72, we enact the zoning ordinance. In 2007, we changed our name from the Municipal Regional Planning Commission to the Livingston Municipal Planning Commission. The difference is there is that in regional planning commissions that are municipalities, they can have extraterritorial jurisdiction outside of their corporate limits with regards to divisions of property and other things as well. But changing our name to strictly being a municipal planning commission means that our jurisdiction simply lies within our corporate limits. We cannot go out and have jurisdiction outside of the corporate limits. So if you'll turn over, one of the things that we'll talk about is the composition of the planning commission. And so we have 5 members that shall be private citizens. 1 member shall either be the mayor or the mayor's designee. And Mayor, I believe your designee is Lachelle Richardson, if I'm not mistaken. And then our member from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is Mr. Bruce Elder. And so the citizen members are appointed by the mayor for a 3-year term, with 1 term expiring each year. And Bruce's position on this board is what's known as coterminous, meaning that as long as he is an alderman and the mayor chooses to have him in that, and the aldermen want him to be that representative, then he can stay there. Some of the powers that are granted by state law here, you'll see, it just talks about powers of the Planning Commission, and the first is to prepare and adopt an official general plan. The general plan may cover any service that the municipality might provide. Examples of the general plan would be the land use and transportation plan and a major thoroughfare plan. And Robert, I think you were on here when we did this. The land use and transportation adopted in 2008 by the Livingston Planning Commission. And basically what that does is it lays out the city and shows where the city would like to see the growth go. Talks about the existing land use, what's going on in it, and then where you think it might go in the future. So the second one is make advisory reports and recommendations to all public officials and agencies regarding the general plan and the development of the area. And so it talks about the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and to the Board of Zoning Appeals in regards to zoning, road standards, plans of services, annexations, and most other aspects of developments within the corporate limits. Though these powers are advisory only, the commission may request information from such agencies such as a school board, power board, housing authority, etc., to determine whether their activities are in compliance with the plan. And we'll get into it a little later, but with regards to the recommendations of what we make to the board, a couple of them are for if someone wants to be annexed into the corporate limits, this is the first place that it comes. And they bring us a written request, and we look at that property and see if it's beneficial to both the person requesting it and to the city of Livingston. And then if it does, then we make a recommendation to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen that they annex it into the corporate limits. Another thing that we make recommendations for is the adoption of city streets. If someone builds a new road and is developing a subdivision and we take a look at that street, if the developer requests it to be put on the city street list, and if it looks good, it's built to our standards, serving citizens of Livingston, then we will recommend it to be put on the city street list. And basically what that means, once it's on the city street list, is that we own the street and that we are the only ones that can make upgrades or modifications to it, and perform maintenance on it. And we can make recommendations in other areas too, and I'll get to that a little bit later, but those are a couple that we've seen over the last few years. Number 3 is very interesting, and it's called mandatory referral. And this is the power to have advance notification of the location and extent of the construction or authorization of any public street, building, park, open space, or utility, whether publicly or privately owned, for the purpose of commission review and approval. Compliance with the Planning Commission's recommendation is not required. However, failure to submit mandatory referral could, in case of a court challenge, delay or even jeopardize a project altogether. And so, essentially, we have the power to have any agency come in front of us and tell us what they're doing. So, for example, when Highway 52 was widened here not too long ago, we didn't do this, but theoretically we could have asked TDOT to come in and tell us what they were planning to do. Now, we can't stop TDOT from doing that, but if they would have denied our request of mandatory referral, then we could have slowed them down significantly. But again, that's in the most extreme cases. We typically want to be good partners with the state of Tennessee, but, sometimes, we need that information. So just something that we've got in our back pocket in case we ever want to use it. So there are three areas, though, that we are the absolute local authority on. The first is what we saw tonight, and that is the approval of preliminary and final plats. Board of Mayor and Aldermen cannot override us if we approve a subdivision plat. That's where we have supreme authority. The second, in how we determine what we approve and what we don't approve, is number C there, the adoption and amendment and enforcement of subdivision regulations. We are the sole determinant on how property is divided in the city of Livingston. Now, the mayor does have some checks and balances because the mayor appoints this board. And then the aldermen choose their representative. And so they do have a little bit of oversight as far as they control who the membership is, but as far as the approval of plats or the adoption of subdivision regulations, we are the supreme authority there in the region. Appeals of our decision in these areas go to the Chancery Court. And then the final way is the approval of site plans, and that is authority that is given to us by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen or the council. So we establish that through the zoning ordinance, and the council allows us to approve site plans with, cooperation with our department heads. They'll take a look at it, make sure, and a site plan is basically a layout of construction that is either multifamily, so apartment complexes, commercial, so any type of storefront, and then industrial. So we don't review single-family residential, and we don't review duplexes for site plans. But anything over that is going to come to us for review. And then it says, while final approval of plats and site plans are left to the discretion of the Planning Commission, all variances must be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm going to get to them right now. So powers 5 and 6 there on that back page is that we prepare and recommend to the chief legislative body a zoning ordinance and a zoning map. And what those things do is they regulate land use in the city limits of Livingston. They say what can be done on a particular property. Typically, and then how we determine what uses can go where. What uses is defined by the zoning ordinance, where is defined by the zoning map. So our zoning ordinance, what we do with that is we come up with a list of permitted uses, special exceptions, and uses that are prohibited in certain areas. And these areas are designated by zoning districts. We have residential districts where basically only houses and apartments and things like that are allowed. We have commercial districts where we focus on businesses. And then we have industrial districts where we focus on where they make things, where manufacturers are located. And so that helps the town regulate land use. And while the council adopts both of these things, any change to that ordinance or that map starts with us, just like what Andre presented a little bit earlier. We take this, we look it over, and then we recommend it to the council. So, but that being said, the council can override our recommendation. And we don't have to make a recommendation, but it just has to start with us. It has to come here first. So if we would have said, so we recommended to approve this tonight to the council. But if we would have said, we don't like this and voted not to recommend it, or if we recommended against it, it still goes to the council, just with a negative recommendation from the Planning Commission. Or if we said, I don't feel like I've had enough time to review this, and we just pass, it still goes to the council with no recommendation. The law says that we have to have an opportunity to make a recommendation to the Planning Commission. So, And so, talking about the Board of Zoning Appeals, they are a completely separate body. They are appointed by the mayor, but they are what's known as a quasi-judicial body. And so they make determinations when people ask for variances or special exceptions or administrative review from the zoning ordinance. And so, quite simply, those three things. A variance is when you have a number that you either want increased or decreased. So if a property is supposed to be 10,000 square feet and someone wants a 9,000 square foot lot instead of a 10,000 square foot lot, they would go to the BZA and ask for that permission. We have some uses that are what's known as special exceptions, where they are allowed to exist, but only under certain conditions. So for example, if you wanted to, I'm trying to think of what a good one would be. If you wanted to do a customary home occupation, which is home-based business, you want to cut hair out of your garage or whatever. There are certain districts where that is a special exception, and so you'd have to go in front of the board, present your case, and then they would let you know one way or the other whether or not you could start that business. And then finally, something that we've seen the last couple of months is administrative review. And administrative review is where the codes enforcement officer makes a determination based upon the zoning ordinance, and then the citizen disagrees with their interpretation. So the Board of Zoning Appeals is the citizen's appellate method without having to take it to court. Like it would start with the Board of Zoning Appeals. And then either the BZA would agree with the codes enforcement officer or they would agree with the citizen. And so that being said, the Board of Zoning Appeals appeal, if you don't agree with the decision of the BZA, again, that goes to the Chancery Court. So the council cannot override decisions made by the Board of Zoning Appeals at all. And they can't override us with regards to subdivision plats or site plan review. But they can on zoning issues. Okay? And now finally, I'll just real quickly talk about the role of the staff planner, which is me. And so I work for the Upper Cumberland Development District, but the City of Livingston contracts with me and has since 2009 to come up and give advice to Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so, but one thing that you guys always need to understand is the decision is yours. Anything that comes here, my advice is simply that. It's a recommendation. And so if you don't agree with what I'm saying, you need to vote no or vote the other way. Yes, no, however you want to vote. So I'll just read these real quick. And it says the role of staff planners attend the meetings of the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. Work with the codes enforcement officer to give the best recommendations to the Planning Commission regarding the approval or denial of subdivision plats and site plans. Advise the Board of Zoning Appeals with regards to variances, special exceptions, and administrative review. Act as a liaison between the town of Livingston and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Help out with any mapping requests through GIS information systems. And then assist with the plan of service study with regards to annexation. Now, there are more things, but those are basically what I'm contracted to do. But if mayor or council or somebody else asks me to do something that's outside that scope, I'll more than likely handle that. And then the final thing is it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. The recommendations that the staff planner gives are advisory only. The ultimate power of decision is with the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. Take that with you. Remember that. Ultimate power is with you. So that's all I got for that. You guys have any questions about any of that?
Yeah, who is the codes enforcement officer?
Great question. I was hoping we'd get to that, Mayor.
We hired a new one, started today, his name is John Hunt. He's got some training to do, so.
John Hunt. That's very good. It was Darius Sims forever. Christian took over after him, and then we had Walter. Yep. Other questions? That'll do it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tommy. As usual, you did a fine job.
Thank you.
Does that take care of our training for the year?
Well, it takes care of a component of it. We have, we've done some training throughout our meetings.
Yes, yeah, I know that. Okay. Number 5, no, that's,
It should be number 6, that's
we
a
got,
typo.
okay. Any other business that the board wants to bring up tonight? Anybody in the audience wants to bring up something?
Oh, did you say we weren't gonna meet?
Right, I was fixing it. We will not meet in December.
Yeah,
Too many holidays.
Ron may have had something.
Yes, sir.
Did you mention in your training about your special powers under certain?
Yeah, so, thank you, Ron. So if we have to cancel a meeting for a month, whether that be for holiday, like in December and May, we typically don't meet, or if we were to not have a quorum, if there is a subdivision plat that comes in front of, that is submitted, and we don't have a meeting that month, if it's 2 lots or less with no variances, I can do what's known as administrative approval, which is I look at it, make sure it complies with our regulations, and if it does, then I'll hand it to Lori and recommend that she sign it. But of course, all of the public works folks have to sign off on it too. So it's not just a my decision. I simply do compare it with the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations, and then the public works folks sign off on it as well, and then give it to Lori. Okay. I didn't have that authority when I originally came up with this, Ron.
Anyone else? We need to bring something up tonight?
Adjourn.
I'll take that as motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all.